Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Resilience 2020. This is the first global virtual conference, and it's an extremely exciting day. So first of all, thank you to everyone for attending. We have a amazing lineup today. We have some great keynote speakers as well as 35 breakout sessions. So I hope that you find today extremely interesting, helpful, resourceful. I also want to note that you don't have to be overwhelmed. We do have all the sessions being recorded, so we will send out a link and you'll be able to either re-review all the sessions that you've seen or to catch up on those that you didn't, because a lot of time and effort was put in to put this global conference together. We're going to have 4 keynote speakers today. One is our own wonderful Charlie Harary, who is going to start today's session. He's the CEO of the Ayven Group. We're going to also have Jason Pfeiffer, who's the editor-in-chief of the Entrepreneurs Magazine. Brian Scudamore, who is the founder and CEO of 1-800-GOT-JUNK, which is a international company. And then David Tenton, which is a venture capital at HOF or HOF Group. So once again, all the sessions will be recorded today, so don't worry if you have to make the hard choice of going to one versus another. And I want to take this opportunity to thank all my partners who made today possible. My name is Shia Rubenstein. I'm from the JCC of Marine Park, and I was working very closely with Avi Krakauer at the JCC for really taking care of today's back end. And thank you so much to Jacob Asani and Morty Silber, Sylvia Cohn, Josh Goldsmith, Guy Orman, Morgan Taylor, Howard, David Gross, and Robert from the TJE. We have a lot of people who put a lot of effort into making today possible. Without any further ado, so Charlie Harary needs no introduction. He's a rock star in the Jewish world. We all know him as an amazing speaker, an attorney, someone who's been sought after all over the place. And Charlie wears several hats, including, being an attorney, working at a huge real estate company, and it's called the Ayven Group. And besides for being an investor, strategic advisor, and a professor, he's an amazing motivational speaker, a radio show and television talk show personality. And without any further ado, and of course, I'd like to thank United Healthshare for making today's possible. They're our title sponsor. You will see their video throughout the day, and they also have an amazing virtual booth that you can visit anytime throughout the day. So thank you to United Healthshare for being the title sponsor this morning. And without any further ado, Charlie Harary.
Thank you, Shia. It's an honor to be here. Thanks for including me into this program. I want to sort of launch it by trying to together work through really what is underlying this idea of resilience. Resilience is maybe the most important trait to develop as a business leader. You can have everything, but if when you get hit, you go down early, it's very difficult to see tremendous growth. So I just want to talk to you tell you one story, and we're going to talk a little bit about the science behind it, and then we'll move on to this incredible day that is ready for all of you. So I spend a lot of my time helping companies out. Really, most of what I do is helping companies grow, working with CEOs, working with executive teams, working with companies themselves after we get involved. And if you remember, what seems like a year ago, but it was really 3 months ago, March, the world started falling out, really started spiraling out of control. As one person said, it was like trying to catch a falling knife. You didn't know if you should put your hands out or put your hands in. That first few weeks, if you remember, I'm sure many of you do, those first few weeks were so challenging. No one had any visibility. No one knew how to make any moves. No one knew what was going on with the economy. It was such a difficult time. And it was one night, late at night, that I was just getting off the phone with a certain company, and a friend of mine called. And I picked up the phone, and I guess I had exuded a little bit less than optimism. And he says, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." He goes, "You don't sound fine." I'm like, "I'm fine." He goes, "You don't sound it." I'm like, "I'm fine." So he says, "You forgot about the seed?" I said, "I forgot about the what?" He's like, "You forgot about the seed." I said, "The seed?" He goes, "Yeah, the seed." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. I probably forgot about the seed. What are you talking about?" And he goes, it's amazing how quickly you forgot. And he goes, go to your computer. I get up, I go to my office, sit down, and at my computer is my email. I click on, and literally as I sat down, there's an email from him, and all it had in it were 2 pages. The pages came from one of my favorite Jewish books. There's a rabbi. His name is the Nesivos Shalom. He's a great rabbi. He's the Slonim Rebbe. And the rabbi is speaking about a period of time. We're not going to get into it here. One of the days that we have throughout the year is a day called Tisha B'Av. He's speaking about a very specific moment in that time where everything seems to turn around. And the rabbi gives an example that is so simple, but so profound that it was that moment in March that literally shifted me. And the story that he tells is so critical that it actually contains within it the depths of what resilience really is. The rabbi describes an interesting scenario. He says, imagine if you're standing by a field and you have in your hand a seed. You look down, it's a seed. It's not worth much, but it's something. Like, it exists. It may not be, you can't sell it on the market for a lot of money, but you have something in your palm. It's called a seed. If you take that seed and you drop the seed into the ground, if you're looking in the ground, if you have the visibility to the seed, once it goes into the ground, you will notice that the seed was once an intact something. And the minute it hits the ground and it goes underneath, after a while, what happens is the seed begins to shake. And slowly, the shell of the seed starts to come apart. Now, if you had very myopic views, you would look down at that moment and say, wait a second. I can't believe it. I had something. It wasn't much, but it was something. It was a seed. Now that I dropped it into the ground, I have less. At least I had a seed. And now as you watch it, the shell starts to shake and the shell starts to fall away and you go, now I have nothing. I don't even have a seed anymore. I've lost the shell. But if you have a little bit more wisdom, the rabbi says, what you'll realize is that the seed, the value that the seed had, it wasn't in the shell. The shell was actually holding back its essence. It was holding back its value. When you dropped that seed into the ground and the shell started to shake and fell away, you didn't have less. You have everything. Because when the shell falls away, what is being given to you is not less seed. It's that behind the shell contains within it the life force, the energy, the potential of not a seed. It doesn't recreate itself. It's of a tree and fruits and thousands of seeds. One person will look at that shell that falls off and goes, really? I can't believe I dropped it. I had at least a seed. I got nothing. The next person look at it and go, at this moment that the shell falls away, what we have is a chance at something so much greater than what we had before. If you want to look at moments of challenge, at moments of disruption, you can see 2 different types of perspectives. There are those people that look at it and say, I can't believe it. When can we go back to normal? Do you remember the good old days? If you look at some people when they see challenge, when they see their shells in life shaking, their response is typical of, remember the good old days? And what they really want to do is recreate the past. There are people like this. They see shells. They see shells in their children. They see shells in their families. They see shells in their clients. They see shells in the business world. And what they're really doing at all times is, as soon as they achieve a certain level of success, as soon as their business has a certain movement, as soon as they get some traction in their business, what they're really doing is holding on to that way of seeing the world. What they're really doing in their business is just preserving what they had once. Then there are other types of people. These are people that as soon as they see the shell start to shaking, you know what they say? Wherever there's disruption, there's opportunity. I was on the phone with a certain executive at one of our companies that we work with, and he says to me, and it was a really bad day. The government just announced a program and didn't come through, whatever. And he says to me, times that are good, when times are good, it's time to make a living. When times are bad, it's time to make a fortune. Whenever you see disruption in this world, if you see past the shell, what you find is that in many ways, disruption is a way of shaking out the shell. Disruption is a way of exposing weakness. Disruption is a way of revealing the holes that were there in our business, that were there in our schedules, that were there in what we do for a living. And what it does is, as we hit disruption, those things become more and more apparent. And because things aren't good, because it's not the way it was, it doesn't wash over our issues. The issues in the economy, the issues in our marketplace, the issues in our industry, the issues in our company, the issues in ourselves. And every time you're seeing disruption, anytime you're seeing a change, anytime you're seeing a shell fall down off a seed, what's really going on is that there's a life force that is behind it that is willing to be revealed. There's a new way of doing things that you never would have seen before. There's a new market that's opening up. There are new needs that clients have that you didn't fully appreciate. The world is going to need things that the world didn't need before. What was once a product that could have taken a decade to be penetrated into a marketplace could take a fraction of that because the world is changing now. And the challenge and the difference between the people that capitalize on it isn't how smart they are. It's not how much resources they have. In fact, in many cases, the more resources you have, the more confirmation bias you have, and in some cases, the less likely you have to adapt. And sometimes the bigger the company, the harder it is to make a shift. It's not what you have that makes you more or less prone to capitalize on the opportunities in front of you. It's what you see. It's what you train your mind to look for. What is resilience? So one of the great mistakes is that we think that resilience is optimism. It's not true. You need to be optimistic, but that's not what resilience is. Resilience isn't things are going to be great. We think it is. We think resilience is individuals that are like, it's going to be great today. It's going to be great today. That feels like resilience, but it's not. What is resilience? So I don't know if you've seen this before. There's a documentary that has been taking over the world by storm. For anyone here who's a sports fan, there's nothing to watch. Like, we used to have March Madness. Like, March Madness used to be like you pick a team that you never heard of and like you watch it like upset some number one seed and like that's madness. This was real March Madness, like the world grinding to a halt in a virus that nobody knows about and the entire world saying, we don't know how to help this. That's like, this is now March Madness. I don't know what they're going to call the NCAA tournament next year. But for the sports fans amongst us, usually we're used to at least watching highlights. So this year, ESPN and Netflix got together and gave us, for those of you who remember these days, it gave us the ability to go into the past because the present wasn't happening, into a documentary called The Last Dance. The Last Dance is the story of Michael Jordan and the 90s Bulls. There was a line in there that was so quick, but it struck me. You know, Michael Jordan was an individual who achieved incredible greatness. How did he do it? So there was some line in there in the middle of one of the documentaries where one of the sessions that was talking about his trainer. He had Michael Jordan took a break from his basketball career and became a baseball player. And in that process, he had to change his body. Baseball players have much stronger legs than upper body strength. Basketball players have it flipped. So when he came back to the Bulls, he had to shift himself. And there was a quick line that one of his trainers said, in which he said that when they had to retrain him, like reformulate his body, he was the hardest working guy in the gym. And when asked why he's pushing so hard, his response were, if I just can push hard enough, I'll get there. My body will do it. Just keep on pushing me. The perspective of a Michael Jordan is the definition of resilience. Resilience is an optimism. It may not work out you think it works out. What you think will happen may not happen. That's not resilience. Resilience is that I'm not a shell, that I don't have one trick, that my business doesn't have to be my business, that because I was good at this, it doesn't mean I have to do this for the rest of my life. My product isn't a shell. It isn't just what it is on the outside. I don't define myself by what's around me. I define myself by a life force that is inside me. That means that if I hit the gym and my muscles can't lift weight, as long as I know and push myself hard enough and I am brutally realistic and my eyes are open to my challenges, I know in my core that I have some life force that has potential, that if I keep at it, it will adapt to that potential. Resilience is the recognition that who I am is beyond anything that you or I even see right now. What my business does for a living may not be what it'll do. And it may be with 100 new little nuances along the way that was never there before. Resilience is not thinking, it's not being a Pollyanna, it's not thinking that it'll be great. It's thinking whatever it will be, I can adapt to it. I have something inside me that is not bound by this world. If you're more inclined spiritually, you know exactly the depths of where this goes. But even if we keep it within the boardroom, it's that comprehension that potential is not formed yet. And my job is not to look the other way. My job is not to complain about the way it was. My job is not to push harder in making sure that I preserve the past. My job is to have the guts to stare closer at the problems. My job is to have the bandwidth to spend a little bit longer in the world of discomfort. My job is to listen closer to my clients, to my employees, to the marketplace, even though what I want to do is count the money I made 6 months ago when this was easier. Because the more time I'm staring at my problems, the more time I'm looking at that seed, the more time I'm trying to solve difficult issues, the more the life force that is within me can come out. The more I am pushing my muscles to failure, because I know when I do that in the gym on Monday, when I come back on Wednesday, those muscles will be stronger. The reason why you can even work out, if anyone works out, or why athletes work, is because they work under a principle called resilience. They know that their muscles will grow when you tear them, if you micro tear them. If we know at our core that what I am made of is a source that is beyond this world, then I know that when I micro tear, when I push myself to make my products better, to make my company stronger, to stare at a world that I never knew before and stare at it long enough where I can see the creases that begin to form, where I can hear the same complaints that my clients are having, that I can watch my employees and I can ask myself, what's it going to be like? How can I adapt? How do I make this work? How do I make this work? The longer I stay in the world of potential, the more I trust that I have within me the knowledge, the ability, the courage, the bravery, the resilience to adapt into the future. That's what resilience is. It may not be the way it was. We may never go back to normal. We go forward to greatness. People that are truly resilient don't want to go back to normal. And they're never happy. That's why guys like Michael Jordan are never happy winning championships. Like 6 wasn't enough. If you watch the documentary at the end, he was fetching that he wanted a 7th. It wasn't that he wanted to put another piece of metal in his house. It was that resilient people understand that life is really about the journey. There's no end, because the excitement of life is not whether you make the sale. The excitement of business is how you build something that gets better and better and better. How you tinker with issues. How you have the ability to get lost in problems. How you stare at a storm coming at you long enough to where you can see where the holes are so you can build a boat that's stronger than anybody else. That's how great people act, by the way. Because for everyone that was brilliant, there's someone that wasn't. And for every great business leader that had all the right background, somebody didn't. And for every great business leader that had more resources than he can count, somebody can barely rub 2 nickels together. That's not how to do it. You know what's the difference between the great ones and the mediocre ones? Is their vision. One of the greatest leaders of all time was a man named John D. Rockefeller. John D. Rockefeller was like the great-grandfather of the business industry. For those who study business history, you know, after the Civil War, this country was in ruins. And there's a bunch of men. I'm not saying that everything they did was ethical. But there's a bunch of titans that basically built the country. Carnegie, Rockefeller, Vanderbilt, J.P. Morgan, Edison, Tesla. There were some people that basically built industries that no one can even rival. John D. Rockefeller had the idea of standardizing oil. And he created from it kerosene. And kerosene was used to light people's homes. Now you can imagine when Edison had his ideas of electricity, backed by J.P. Morgan with his money. When Nikolai Tesla, backed by Westinghouse. By the time you had these 4 individuals in the game, the world was running toward electricity. John Rockefeller's entire business was about to be disrupted. This was the greatest moment of crisis for him. In the beginning, he tried to fight them. You know what he did? He just stared long enough. He just stared. John Rockefeller wasn't a genius. He didn't come from a great background. His father was barely even home. His father was a traveling liar. He just stared longer in the problem, and longer in the problem, and longer in the problem, until he realized that, you see, that thing that he was creating, kerosene, is going to go away. His whole world was going to collapse. And then he realized that when he was refining the oil, there's another thing that was being used. It was just being chucked. It was called gasoline. And gasoline can go and make motors work differently. He watched the shell fall apart. As opposed to bemoaning his fate, he just stared and stared and understood that there's something inside this. There's something inside me. There's something inside this business, until he realized that he can use the waste. And that gave birth to not only everything being motorized, it gave birth to the whole car, and it changed the whole world. Greatness is not macro. It's not whether or not you uncover the next thing that's going to change humanity. Greatness is micro. It's how we work every day. It's how we grapple with challenges every day. Most of the greatest innovations that have taken place, most of the greatest companies that have taken place, are individuals that are just trying to make it a little bit better. Google was trying to get the paid ads down a little bit better, which is why they beat their competition out. They're people that are at the forefront of business. They're just trying to make their products, They're just trying to create a service. They're just trying to build a company that works out the creases a little bit better. And what drives them, whether they can say it or don't say it, in my opinion, what drives them is this knowledge that I haven't tapped into all that I am. There is more in me. There is a life force behind the shell that I have yet to tap into. And every time I see a shell fall apart, what that indicates to me that there's a chance at something that there wasn't a chance at. There's a chance to dig into a piece of me that I didn't have to dig into before. There's a chance to push my team to deliver a service, to craft a product in a way that I never have to craft for. If you want to look, don't look any further, by the way, if you want to look at a good example of this, than event planners. Event planners. Yesterday, my wife was telling me that my son had a bar mitzvah. She pulled up in the lawn, and it was like, you couldn't believe it. 2 months ago, when you had a bar mitzvah, it was like, sorry, kid. Like, a couple of friends said mazel tov. Now you pull up in front of someone's lawn, and it's like, what happened? It's a micro story of somebody who used to plan events indoors, and the world stopped going indoors. And a few people, they got blown out. And a few people said, well, let's take the same level of creativity and just put it on the lawn. And now a new micro industry was created. And now you look at people's lawns, you can't see a graduation, a bar, or bat mitzvah. You can't see anything anymore. Where'd that happen? It's the mentality of innovators. That is resilience. It's the ability to get up again and again, not because you have to. That's a good way to do it. It's because you know that there's something you haven't discovered yet. And when you apply this to your business, it becomes a little more fun. Now you have to make payroll, of course. And when you adapt, you may have to make difficult decisions, of course. But the mentality of those that are on the top, the mentality of those that are on the bottom, it don't matter. The mentality of those that make it in the long run are those that sense that I have to start looking for the life force in myself and in everything around me. And every time I see shells being taken down, it's not a time to make a living. It's time to make a fortune. What can I do? How can I adapt? How can I change? How can I stay in a period of discomfort longer than everybody else? Because if I do, I'm going to see something that nobody sees. And I'm going to, even on the margin, even 1%, build something nobody builds. My blessing is that we should all be that way, because that's in those moments where the true us comes out. We got a great program today. I hope everybody enjoys the session. I'll be back at 3:00 with an interview. So thanks so much for tuning in, and enjoy this jam-packed day of this incredible, incredible conference. Thanks so much, everybody.